YouTube battle community, Beach Boys fans, random people on the internet. My name is Giggens, and we are here today to talk about a British UK release from 1970, the Beach Boys' Buggin', or Bug-In? Buggin', released through EMI Starline Capital in England in 1970 and various other countries throughout the world. I've been looking for a copy of this for quite some time now, and mostly because of the track listing. The track listing on this thing is so bizarre, and in doing what research I could to discover anything about this thing and coming up with my own conclusions here and there, I think I figured out why it's as bonkers as it is. So, real quick rundown here for those of you just coming into the story. The Beach Boys in the late 60s in England and Europe were on fire. They were humongous over there. Their records were top 10 records. They had singles that were in the top 10, top 20. They were selling out shows wherever they went. In America, completely different story. They were completely has-beens. No one wanted anything to do with them in America. Canceling tours, canceling shows. Not a good scene. But in England, basically starting with Pet Sounds, things blew up with them. They had their albums coming out in England throughout the 60s, some of them a little bit later than others. For instance, Surfer Girl didn't come out until 1967 in England. And I have a feeling because that album coming out so late, and a couple of the various greatest hits albums, along with the success of Pet Sounds, and the just immense success of the guys in general, spawned this hunger and want for Beach Boys material, no matter how they can get it. So I have a feeling this and a handful of other bizarro releases were released around the same time. I have a feeling that's why these things came out, was to feed a need that Beach Boys fans in Europe, and particularly England, because this is where this one's from, they wanted something, they just wanted more, they wanted more. Because at that point, the Beach Boys only had a handful of albums. I mean, a handful, it would have been probably 10 or something at that point, which is insane by, these days standards. That's like a band's entire discography, but back then it was like, oh yeah, it's like 6 years of work. Anyway, this album was in fact an import into the United States through Gem. Gem did a lot of imports in the early 70s, most of the 70s. And a lot of times you'll see the Gem sticker on some of these albums. This one doesn't have the Gem sticker on it, but it was also on 8-track, it was also on cassette. On the cassette, the sequencing was a little bit of a different order. The songs were rearranged in a different way. The inner sleeve on this thing, mine is a plain white sleeve. There's apparently versions that show other albums like, the Capitol series would have done, or a lot of other labels would have done, where they advertise other records you could buy from the label. And I just wanted to point out a couple of things about this. So I wrote down a cheat sheet for myself, because there were a lot of facts on here that I wanted to kind of nail down and add to this video, because I felt it was important. So, as we read here, like I said, the resulting popularity of Pet Sounds, where it did pretty well in America, it blew up in England. It was a gigantic smash, obviously resulting in Sgt. Pepper because of the inspiration for what the album meant to the Beatles and popular music in general. Britain was pretty quick to be like, that's something cool. Let's try to do something our own way. So here's the thing. In April of '67, the single for Then I Kissed Her, backed with Mountain of Love, hit the top 5. It went to number 4. Now, this is also mind-blowing, because this is, right before the Summer of Love. Things were getting real psychedelic. Things were getting real groovy. Here comes this cover of Then I Kissed Her, and it was a humongous smash. It was a top 5 smash. And it was, at that point, I guess, 2 years old? 2 or 3 years old? And I really think it's due to the popularity of Pet Sounds. Again, the Beach Boys were on fire. They could have put out any song as a single and probably would have done really well. But it was really cool to hit Al singing Then I Kissed Her, and that went out on hit number 4. The Surfer Girl LP came out in March of '67 and hit number 13. Big draw, which is also kind of strange because, at that point, David Marks had been out of the band for a few years. Al's not even on that album, I think. And I don't think he's on that album. He might be there in a couple of spots, but I don't think he's in the whole thing. And here's an album that's their entirely older surf stuff, which Keith Moon would have loved. And apparently the rest of England wanted that as well. They were playing catch up a little bit, and that album hadn't been released there yet. So here's a band on top of the world. Here's a new album by them. Even though it's older material, they gobbled it up. Best of the Beach Boys Volume 2 came out in October of '67. Volume 3 came out in November of 68. Wild Honey, March of 68. The Do It Again single went to number 1 in July of 68. Breakaway hit number 6 in 1969. Cotton Fields hit number 5 in May of 1970, which was after this came out. And I Can Hear Music was a number 10 hit in March of 69. The chart placements for their records in England blows me away, because in America, after Pet Sounds, that was it for quite some time. They were not selling a whole lot of albums, and if they were, they weren't doing too well in the charts. I mean, some of their lowest placing albums were from this time. Friends went to hit like I think Friends hit like 121 or 120 in the charts, which is abysmal in terms of Beach Boys talk. Smiley Smile hit number 9. It was a top 10 album. Wild Honey, number 7. Friends, 13. Giant top 20 album in England for them. Best of Volume 3 went to number 8. 2020 hit number 3. Damn, a top 5 album. And their Greatest Hits album, which came out in 1970, hit number 5. In England, they were a top 10 band. They could do no wrong, man. And I really think that's why. I think the success of the guys is being so popular over there and being fresh. I mean, they had been known, but Pet Sounds is going to put them on the map. And at that point, they just became a giant concert draw, and people wanted to experience them. And whatever came out was instantly a hit. Not instantly, or not maybe a giant hit, but it did very, very well, much better than the States. And I wanted to also mention there was an album called The Beach Boys, which came out also on the Starline label in early 1970, and that featured mostly early greatest hits. There's also one called The Beach Boys on the Made for Music for Pleasure label, MFP. Again, a very weird track list of songs from 1963 to 1968. Very weird stuff on that one, kind of like this. Followed by Live in London, which of course we all know, 1970. And also the standard Beach Boys greatest hits in England in 1970, which has all their big stuff, I Get Around, Good Vibrations, Heroes and Villains, you name it. So that's pretty cool. Copies of this album released in Holland have a slightly different back cover, which is a little bit more simple. It's got a picture of them and all the songs kind of going down this way, and a more simple back cover. This is kind of a busy cover. So that's kind of it for the stats. I wanted to talk about the songs themselves. So while all the songs are fantastic, their sequencing, their choice is bizarre, but I really think it's because people were buying their music maybe for the first time and hearing early stuff and the stuff they're doing now. And I gotta give the Beach Boys UK division credit, because here was a group of people who were putting out a set that encompassed all of their work and not just focusing like on one part. And they did that, but there's a handful of these sets that came out around this time, like this one and The Beach Boys and a few other ones, where you get a mixture of everything. And I think that's kind of cool. It makes for a really bizarre playing. I mean, like on this thing alone, you go from songs like Finders Keepers, a really early track, right into You Still Believe in Me. That's a weird juxtaposition, man. And then on side 2, you get stuff like Girls on the Beach fading into Be Here in the Morning, which kind of works. I like that. But I'm just going to go over the track listing here, and I'll post it below in case you guys can't find this. But Little Do Scoop opens the album. Great. Here's the Bug. Kind of a do scoop. Not really. Followed by Don't Hurt My Little Sister. Interesting track. And then drops right back in time to Finders Keepers. Jumps forward to You Still Believe in Me, which is a bizarre feel. Which then fades into With Me Tonight. I can dig that. Kind of cool. But then jumps fast forward to 1969 with All I Want to Do with Mike screaming. So on one album, you go from the beginning to the most current stuff on one side of this LP already. Side 2 starts off with Why Do Fools Fall in Love? Great song. Which segues into the Surfer Moon. I can dig that. Cherry Cherry Coupe follows it. That's cool. Girls on the Beach. Yeah, that works. And then slides into Be Here in the Morning, which I thought was really cool. I like that feel. And then it ends with I Was Made to Love Her, which is very cool. But it's almost like someone just got like all of their albums out and just blindly pointed to 10 different songs or 12 different songs and said, whatever I picked, that's what's going on here, and in that order. Very strange. I'm not sure if anyone was in charge of like sequencing this stuff, or they just kind of put it together in hopes that it worked, or maybe they didn't care. Starline was their budget label. Maybe it's just something to stick on the shelves at the grocery store when you're buying your grapes and your oranges and your milk, and you're like, oh, Beach Boys album. All right, we can grab this. Mix-wise, I've played this a few times. The mixes don't sound special or anything different. They just sound like the standard things you've heard a million times. But they sound good. A little bit scratchy in this particular copy, but yeah, I've been searching for this for years. It's available online. It's not super cheap. You can get it on Discogs if you want. I don't do much with online shopping for records. I mostly find them in the wild, mostly because it's the thrill of the search. If you're into really digging for records, going to stores, going through boxes, going through old dusty places and shelves, and finding something that you're looking for or didn't know you'd expect to find, that's what makes it worthwhile. That's what makes it fun. That's what makes it exciting. So this, I was on vacation a few days ago, just went to an antique shop, didn't think I'd find anything, boom, Buggin', the Beach Boys. Blew my mind. I think it was like 15 bucks. Cheap. I can do that. So, but I live for this kind of stuff. I absolutely love these weirdo compilations of just bizarre track listings. Songs you would never think to see on a hits album or a compilation album. They don't do stuff like this anymore. You know, when are you ever going to find an album where you got Don't Hurt My Little Sister with Me Tonight on side 1, and then side 2 has The Surfer Moon, and then I Was Made to Love Her? Like, where else would you find that? I'll tell you, Beach Boys Buggin'. So, that's kind of it. Let me show you what the inside of the record looks like here. Just a plain white sleeve on the inside, and then your blue Starline label. This thing cleaned up pretty well. It was pretty dusty. It's got a couple of scratches, and it's got some pops here and there, but it's a record, so that's gonna happen. But yeah, overall, I'm really stoked to have this thing, and my next goal is to find that other one, the Music for Pleasure from 1970, that also has kind of a wacky track list of stuff from 63 to 68. You can look it up. It's online. I think it might be on Discogs as well. It's just called The Beach Boys, and I want to say it has a blue cover, but I could be wrong about that. So here's a close-up of the back cover. And a close-up of the front so you can see this stuff. And that's it. That's the Beach Boys Buggin'. Easily a 10 out of 10. Duh. Yeah. Not much to say about this thing beyond the fact that it was probably just made to coincide with the massive success of the Beach Boys in Europe at this time. And also for, I guess, the Live at London LP coming out soon after this, and for 2020 being out, and then the Sunflower album coming out. So a lot of releases were coming out, and so record companies knew the Beach Boys were hot. People were going to buy this stuff and go see them in concert. They could put basically whatever songs they wanted on a mix and put it out, and people will probably buy it. So that's probably why. There's probably not a whole lot of history behind this thing or reason as to why it was done, besides maybe a cash-in, or just because, you know, they had to put a Beach Boys greatest hits in the rack somewhere that a quota to fill, and this was what happened. So that's it. My name is Giggens. This has been the Beach Boys Buggin'. 10 out of 10. Hands down. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you guys have this thing, or if you have the other kind of wacky European or anywhere in the world greatest hits where they just pick different songs or different compilations with different track listings. I'm really into that stuff. As you know from watching this channel, I've done a couple of these over the years, and I'm going to continue to do more as I find them. So thank you so much for watching. My name is Giggens. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.